Well, that was good. I man, I'm sorry. I really wanted to tell Andrew to keep going because that was amazing. So I sat over there in awe just from the singing this morning. So thank you for. I hope you felt it too. I really do. Already blessed. As James read earlier, we're going to be in Matthew, the 14th chapter today, and I'm not going to go back and reread it. It's a very common story. We've heard it many times. We start off in 11 where we see Jesus. He's walking beside the Sea of Galilee, and he comes upon two men. And it seems without hesitation, Jesus says, "Come and follow me." Jesus has a plan for their lives, for steps for them to take that they have no idea. They have no idea what's about to happen. You know, today we're going to celebrate our graduates. You know, we want to focus on these verses, and especially there's some steps in these verses that I really want us to focus on. And they're not just steps for graduates; they're steps for all of us. Situations that we all have to go through in our lives, and sometimes those steps are willing. We're very willing to take some steps. Sometimes we're not. Sometimes they're so challenging we don't know if we can or should. And sometimes we're forced to take steps we never intended to have to take. But in Matthew, we hear that Jesus says, "Come and follow me." And the great part is the second part of this, where it says, "At once they left their nets and they followed him." Peter's journey at this point forward, he's there for so many huge things. I guarantee he didn't believe his steps were going to lead him to all these moments, from fisherman to the closest friend to a leader of the church. But it also made no sense. What he was about to do seems absurd. You see, Peter had to step away from pretty much everything that he knows. He has to step away from all the good things that he had known in life. And at this point, he's stepping away from his occupation and his family. But even more, he's stepping away from, and we'll talk about it more later, but comfort. At this point, Paul's comfortable. He's doing what he's supposed to do, most likely what his father did. He is comfortable. And what he's about to do, the steps he's about to take, are going to lead him to uncomfort. He's going to be in places he never imagined to be. He's going to have some of the hardest steps he's ever going to take. Satan lives in comfort. Satan loves comfort. I love comfort. But I have to realize that sometimes Satan wants me in comfort because he doesn't want me to step. He doesn't want me to get out of a boat. He doesn't want me to do these things. He doesn't want me to be like Peter and dance on the water with God. So Satan works in comfort. As Peter follows Jesus, he's there for the calming of the seas. He's there when he stops the storm, when he casts out demons. He heals various sicknesses and disease. He raises a young woman from the dead. Peter is there. Few of Peter's most well-known steps are what we're going to talk about today. They come soon after one of his worst moments in his life. His best friend in many ways, his cousin, someone he loves dearly, has just been murdered. And even more than that, a senseless, ridiculous murder. One that makes no sense in any way, shape, or form, one that should not have happened, and really happened to say we could. And Jesus has to deal with this. He has to figure out how to deal with this. So, when Jesus receives this news, he's crushed. He's crushed. And he does like we want to do, most likely. When I get bad news or when things happen, I usually don't go on with my day. I usually just have to take a moment. I just have to breathe. I have to take some time and almost like go through it. I need that time almost to grieve in some ways or to deal with it. And the reality is that's not what's going to happen. We know that anytime Jesus is doing what Jesus is doing, people are following. And they're not following just because they want to know him or they want to follow him, but also because they want fed. They want a better situation they were in before, and they were just there. So Jesus wants to take this moment alone, and they're hungry. and they're needing, and Jesus steps away from himself, and he does what Jesus does, and he takes a few fish and a few loaves, and he feeds. And he feeds thousands, they say. Christ commanded his disciples to make their way to the other side of the lake, and we already know how this story goes. You know, I pointed out before in the teen room, I want us to realize that these are fishermen. They know what they're doing. There's no chance they're going to get in the boat if they know there's a storm. There's no chance they're going to get on the boat if they know it's raining. So they're going into a position that they know themselves, it's got to be calm. It's got to be okay right now for them to get into the boat. So they do. But we also know that what happens next is a storm does blow in. And it's not just a regular storm, because if it was a regular storm, fishermen would be okay with it. They've dealt with storms. But these fishermen were scared to death. They were already afraid of the impending death, most likely. And to top it off, as they're scared and dealing with the wind and the waves and all the things that are going on, they look out and they see a ghost. I mean, why not? It's already gotten bad. Why not just throw more on it? And it's cool because Jesus does what we take advantage of, and we often don't even see, but Jesus at this point does something so amazing. He just identifies himself. I'm feeling like he knew that they're freaking out. He knows that they're scared, and he knows this is, the ghost situation. I mean, this is poor. And Jesus says, whoa, calm. It is me. And Peter, man, I love Peter. Said it in the teen room, I'll say it again. Man, I love Peter. I'm so glad if I have a chance to preach, I'm going to preach on Peter. I love talking about Peter. If they ever did a movie and I needed somebody, to fill in, Peter would be me. I'd be him. Because Peter is that guy. That guy that does things that everybody else goes, why? What? But we say, oh, it's Peter. Peter does what anybody would do at this situation, right? If you're in a boat and you're thinking of impending death, storms and waves around you, and all this stuff is going on, and the ghost calls out and studies Jesus, Peter does what anybody does and says, hey, tell me to walk on the water. Absurd. I mean, to me, it's absurd at this point. That's normally not what's going to come to somebody's mind. But he wants to. He wants to walk on the water. And he's seeking permission. And he goes about it, maybe not the best way. I've done a lot of things in my life where I said, oh, yeah, I'd do it. I would do it. Of course I would do it. But then the opportunity comes to do it, and the first thing I say is, whoa, I didn't really mean I was going to do it. I mean, I just wanted to feel strong in that moment. I wanted to feel like I could do it, and I wanted you to believe it. But now that is in front of me, I don't want to do this. So many times, that is exactly what I've done. And I kind of wonder if this is what Peter was doing. He was being Peter. He was being strong in the moment. But the problem is he started it out really wrong. He started it out by saying, if it is you. Oops. It's probably not what you want to say. Because Jesus is like, I know who I am. Yeah. So Peter, at that moment, has to do what he's asking to do. And he asks permission. He said, if it is you, tell me to come and walk on the water. I can guarantee these are not steps he ever imagined he was going to take. He didn't plan ahead of time. He didn't think as a child, someday I want to. He had no recollection, no planning, anything that this is going to happen. And Peter does. He steps. He steps out of the boat and he begins to walk across the water with the wind and the waves. And for a brief moment, it says he takes his eyes off. He loses his focus. And at that point, we know he begins to sink and think, God, he is smart enough to realize at that moment, Lord, save me. So often, I get in those moments where I can't save myself, but I try harder. I don't go to, Lord, save me. I don't lean on the one thing I need to lean on. And in this moment, Peter says, Lord, and because he knows only the Lord can save him. So he's very smart. The other awesome part of this story is that we skip so quickly over it sometimes, that as he yells out, "Lord, save me," it says, the Lord reaches out. He went to him. He did the work. And he said, "Come." And Peter grabs on. How often do we not call out for the right help? Do we look other places to find our help, to find our security, to find our need? But Peter knew it. Man, I wish I knew it as much as Peter realizes it at this point. The obvious first step we're talking about is Peter just to step out of the boat. Peter, of course, is the only one to take this risk. In some ways, the other guys are smarter until we see how this story is going to keep going. I kind of wonder what they were thinking whenever Peter says, "Tell me to come out." If Peter looks behind him and says, "Hey, let's go." And they're like, "No. I mean, you're the one challenging Jesus here." And Peter does. On his own, he takes the risk. Like I said before, the devil loves comfort. He loves comfort. He loves for us to sit in comfort. He loves for us to sit there and be so comfortable that we don't have to do or say or try anything. Peter is in a very uncomfortable situation, and he decides to do what he's asking his God to do because he believes and trusts. The devil loves comfort. There are many successful people throughout history that went out of their comfort zone over and over and over and led amazing, crazy, doesn't make any sense kind of lives. There was a boy that at 16, his family was homeless. They were forced out of their home, land taken over, and they actually moved to public land where they actually had to build their own cabin from scratch. He had to work to support them as a young boy, and he only had about 1 year of school throughout his entire infancy because he was always working. At 9, his mother had died. They were unable to afford a burial, so they did a crude burial in a field. He taught himself to read. It says that he often would walk miles just to find somebody with a book he could borrow. He spent much of his childhood only working, farming, working as a railroad worker, and then skip ahead. Later in his life, at 32, he actually ran for a state legislature, and he lost. And embarrassingly enough, he lost so bad that he also lost his job. At 33, he borrowed some money from a friend. He wanted to begin his own business. Shortly after, he went bankrupt, and he said he spent 17 years to pay that debt off. At 35, he became engaged to be married, but the woman he was engaged to died. Said he spent 6 months in bed doing nothing after a nervous breakdown. At 38, he sought to become the speaker of the state legislature. Once again, he was defeated. At 40, he sought to become an elector, and he was defeated. At 43, he ran for Congress, and he lost. At 54, he ran for the Senate of the United States, and once again lost. At 56, he sought the vice presidential nomination for his party's national convention. He got less than 100 votes. Not really what you want on your tombstone. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected president of the United States. I always think of that when I think of Abraham Lincoln. Just to keep going, keep taking steps. Peter had the courage and the faith to step out and do the uncomfortable. He didn't do it because he had knowledge. He did it because he had faith. For our high school seniors, life is full of risk. The challenging high school years, the risk you're going to have to take afterwards, the staying in the career you decide, staying in school, staying in a position that you think is not going to be where you need. All these things are going to come. Adults could go on for you don't want us to. Of all the risks we wish we would have, the ones we didn't. You're going to have so many risks, but there will be decisions that are even bigger than that. When God says, "Follow me," and then most importantly, maybe we'll do like Peter, and we'll lean on him and him only and follow. The second is those first 3 steps out of the boat. They're huge. We always hear that the first step, that's the biggest one. That's the hardest one, the first step. It's true, but it's not always true. Elliot, you want to He helped me in class. He's probably not going to help me now. You see, it is hard to take that first step. You know, in Indiana Jones, for all you Indiana Jones fans, you're awesome. And if you're an Indiana Jones fan, you know that it's called the Bridge of Faith, is what it was called. And it was this bridge that you saw nothing other than the emptiness below it. And as Indiana Jones steps out, there's no step. And he begins to fall. Luckily, he doesn't. That'd be a horrible movie. But he figures out, what am I doing wrong? And he realizes faith. So the next time, he steps. And he hits. That first step is so hard. But what about the steps after? You know, I doubt any of us could truly grasp what Peter's dealing with as he takes one step. But still, at this moment, he's one step. So at this point, he's taking a few steps, but what is he's still holding on to? I guarantee he's still holding on to the boat. Those first few steps, as hard as they are, man, the steps that come after, how hard are they? To completely let go. To get to the point where you're stepping so far away, at some point you have to say, okay. You have to have the faith to know you're going to stand. Challenge in life, we're going to face a lot of fears and a lot of times that we're anxious about in situations in our life. For grads, it may be just this certain one right now where you are stepping out on your own. And we know, older people, it really is stepping out on your own. When you have to make your own decisions on church, your own decisions on life, when you have to live what you made the day before, and when you have to figure all those things out, that is a great challenge. Those are steps that we often don't think about when you're at them. And I pray that you do better than us sometimes, and your commitment stays strong, even when it gets hard, even when it gets tough, even when you think failure is the only thing that you will get, that you will have faith that each step will lead you where you need to go. You know, the last one is just an inadequacy. At some point, Peter had felt this inadequacy to continue on. He has taken some steps. He has let go of the boat, but at some point, there was this desperation. He starts to sink. Paul knows he is powerless. Satan is there. He hates this moment. He sees Peter doing amazing. He sees this faith, this unshakable, and Satan begins and he starts saying, the wind, and he's whispering, the waves. You're going to sink. This isn't where you want to go. Because that's who Satan is. The quicker we can realize that in our lives, that Satan is exactly who God said he is. He wants us to sink. He'll do anything possible to see us sink. Satan distracts with doubts and fears and inadequacies, and Peter started to feel inadequate. Sometimes our steps feel more backwards than forwards in life. We think we're moving, and all of a sudden we realize we're not. And then we have to figure out how to continue to step. You know, so often when this story is preached, we spend all of our time talking about the sinking, that lack of faith, that moment, taking the eyes off. Great, that's amazing focus where we need to be. But after reaching out Jesus' hand, Peter did what we often don't talk about. And at this point, Jesus is hand in hand with Peter as they together walk back to the boat. Peter, I guarantee this time he's led step by step, copying Jesus' every move as he makes his way back to the boat. Albert Einstein, when he discovered the E equals MC squared, obviously that's a big deal. We don't think of it as a big deal because it's so common nowadays. When that was a big deal back in the day, and it was so big, the institutions around the world in this country wanted him so badly to come speak. They wanted to hear. They wanted to know. But it also wasn't a world that we know now where everybody knows what everybody looks like. It wasn't a world where social media and TV, and we have all these things where everybody goes, oh, that's Albert Einstein. They didn't know what he looked like. They probably would have been surprised the first time. There was a story that Albert Einstein told. He had a driver that went with him everywhere. He was the only person that ever drove him. Well, the story goes, Albert said he walked into the garage looking for his driver, wanting to work on the plans for the next day's venture. And it says Albert Einstein walks into the garage, and he's shocked. He's expecting the driver to be doing something with the car. And he walks in, but he sees the driver doing everything Albert does, speaking all the words Albert speaks. He's emulating exactly what Albert Einstein does. And Albert Einstein, he says he is blown away. He said it's perfect. And it's funny because he actually tells the driver, he says, well, maybe next time you should lead it. I'm sure there was some snickers. And the driver says, well, only if you drive. You know, the story goes that Albert Einstein one day said, all right, I'm driving. That's that moment where, if you are. You know, that driver at that moment was like, uh-oh. I mean, he's going to drive, but when we get there, hopefully he's going to stand up. But it says that the driver actually got up. He did the entire presentation with Einstein sitting in the back, amazed, because he nailed it. Nailed every part of it. Except someone that day decided to ask a question. The smartest driver in the world answered, that question is so simple, even my driver could answer that. Grads, step continually with God. Learn only from Him. Copy Him. Do everything that He has done. Look at the Bible. The example is there. If we can do that, if you can do that, man, our lives will be dancing on water. Don't give in to all the other things. You know, as we close, you know, if you've lost your way, you've stepped into a world that is completely unforgiving, that wants so badly for you to listen to all the negative, all the horrible, that wants you to get up every day thinking it's not going to be good, where Satan is sitting there whispering, no, look at this, look at that, don't look at, because that is what he does. Or maybe today is that one day where you want to take that big step, that first step where you say to Jesus, I believe. And you want to take the waters of baptism, and you want to become and walk and be as God has come to offer to us. If you're hurting, if you're needing, man, this is a church that prays. For all of people like me who have been on the other side, you know the power of prayer. You're blown away by the powers of prayer. On some ways, I hope you're blessed someday, but on other times, I hope you're not. But the reality is this church loves to pray. If we can pray for you, let us do that today. But also, if we can help you to walk for the first time as a saved brother or sister in Christ, come now as we stand and sing.
There's a stirring deep within me. Could it be my time has come?